Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is the Eccles Unlimited podcast. I am your host, Terrence Eccles, and today I'm not going to talk about something that is sports related. I've decided to talk about something that, is near and dear to my heart and something that I feel like I should definitely talk about, especially because of the recent events that have happened. I'm sure everyone has seen the outrage and the response to the tragic death of George Floyd. And it doesn't matter whether it's George Floyd or Eric Gardner or Freddie Gray or Tamir Rice or Trayvon Martin or anybody for that sake. It's another death. It's another death at the hands of someone who is trying to enforce the law and using a practice that is called excessive force and has also been linked to the term police brutality. And so today I wanted to talk about a little bit about, racism and how it affects every single black person, every single brown person in this country, every single person of color in this country. And even it should affect every single person in this country. In one way or another, you should be affected by racism and you should feel some type of way about those who have no problem with displaying racism. So, yes, this is going to be another post about the killing of black people, and it's what's flooded everyone's timeline for the past few days, but no, it's not enough. It's not enough because someone is dead. People are losing their lives because of this. This needs to be something that is talked about every single day until black and brown and other people of color and their lives aren't being lost at the hands of someone who is practicing excessive force or police brutality or something that involves racism or racist thoughts, because that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. It's racism. So, and where that comes from is the racism that many people have. Police, especially, always think the worst in black people. They always believe in the worst case scenario when dealing with us. This belief in the worst and believing that something negative is going to happen in an interaction with a black person is what's causing many black people to lose their lives. It's what's causing many people of color to feel afraid of law enforcement, to feel like the judicial system and the law enforcement people who are hired and are trained to protect us and to serve us and to help us interpret and enforce the laws that we have here in this country. These people don't feel safe. We don't feel safe. Black people these days can't go for a run around their neighborhood and not have the thought in the back of their head. Black people can't go to the park and look at birds and without the thought or having the idea in the back of their head that they could possibly have the cops called on them. And it's a serious matter in which the cops get called, the cops come, and black people are automatically seen as a threat, automatically seen as someone who is not going to abide by the rules or someone who has done something wrong. And I'm thankful. I'm very thankful for the life that I live. I'm very thankful for the era I was born in. I'm very thankful for a lot of things, but especially because of the fact that racism has not affected me in the way it has other people. It hasn't affected me the way it has affected my parents, the way has it affected my grandparents, the way it has affected other people in my life, other friends, family members. I'm blessed. I'm thankful for it though. But I would like to touch on how racism has affected my life especially. So in my life, I've always had to deal with the concept people who have made comments about me, about the way I speak, the way I act, and different behaviors and mannerisms and things I do. And one thing that people don't understand and don't realize is that racism comes in many different ways and shapes and forms. Racism isn't just one blatant thing. Like, it isn't just one form of racism, like walking up to a black person and calling them the N-word. Racism comes in so many different forms. And the form that I've often had to deal with has been in the form of someone coming up and talking to me and saying something like, something along the lines of, "You're white," or "You're the whitest black person I know." Those types of statements have made me feel terrible about myself, because obviously being a black person in America, you feel very proud. It's a sense of pride that you have. And when someone calls you that and someone says that, they don't mean it as an insult. But it has a racist undertone and a racist connotation. And I just wanted to explain that today, because I don't think enough people understand that, and they don't understand how their subtle forms of racism are part of the problem and why black people continue to have to deal with racism in this country. It's not as outward as it used to be back in the day for many people, but it's still, the subtle versions of racism are still very relevant today. So let's just talk about the definition of racism. So when you look up racism in the dictionary, it's defined as prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior. But the other definition of racism that I'd like to relate back to my point is the belief that all members of each race possess characteristics or abilities specific to that race, especially so as to distinguish it as an inferior or superior to another race or races. So that definition really sums up my point here. And my point is that calling a black person white for positive behaviors and actions such as speaking proper grammar, getting good grades, living in suburban neighborhoods, doing stuff like that for positive things, is saying that, oh, black people aren't supposed to have that. We're not supposed to be able to speak proper English. We're not supposed to be able to live in suburban neighborhoods. We're not supposed to be able to get good grades. So it's not an action that you can associate with a black person, which therefore makes it racist. Going back to that definition, it says belief that all members of each race possess characteristics or abilities specific to that race, especially so as to distinguish it as inferior or superior to another race or races. So the actions that you're associating with being white are considered superior actions. So you're saying that white people are superior. And keep in mind, if we are aware of our privileges, and if more white people are aware of the privileges that they've been provided with, then I think we can go further into understanding that racism is something that is still very, very prevalent in this country. And if we can continue to eliminate the subtle racism that comes in something as so simple as calling a black person white, then I think we are making progress. So there's something else that I wanted to address on the topic of race and on the topic of, racial injustice. And while we're talking about this, so a lot of the things that we have been seeing in the media that pertain to the death of George Floyd and the deaths of the many people who have come before him and unfortunately have been murdered by the police or someone who is trying to enforce the law, is we have gone back and we have seen that in the NFL players, starting with Colin Kaepernick, have decided to take a knee during the national anthem to protest the injustice and the inequalities that many black people have to face each and every day. And so by taking this knee, they are bringing attention to the issue. Okay? So I just want to talk about the issue of Colin Kaepernick and why a lot of the times this subtle racism that white people and other people who don't support him have is still there. Like someone who doesn't identify as a racist can still have racist thoughts and racist beliefs. And I just wanted to explain, just get into a little bit of the facts of why Colin Kaepernick did what he did. So from the beginning, Kaepernick has stated that he is protesting the unequal treatment of black people in America. He has stated that from the jump. So he started his protest by sitting during the national anthem. This is a fact. He sat during the national anthem to begin his protest. Another fact is that he spoke with a Navy SEAL, and the Navy SEAL told him he'd feel better about Kaepernick's protest if he were to kneel. So Kaepernick decides to go along, and he agreed with what the Navy SEAL had to say, and so he decided to start taking a knee during the national anthem. So my issue with a lot of the people who oppose Colin Kaepernick and oppose his protest is that if he was protesting the treatment of veterans, and I remember Nick Wright bringing this point up when he was talking about Colin Kaepernick way back a few 4 or 5 years ago when Kaepernick did this. I remember Nick Wright bringing up the fact that if he was protesting the treatment of veterans and he doesn't believe that veterans get taken care of well enough, and he was still kneeling, but he was protesting a different cause, do you think he'd still get the hate he gets today? Do you think he still wouldn't be in the NFL because of NFL owners conspiring with each other against him? Do you think Colin Kaepernick wouldn't have an opportunity in the NFL if he were protesting something different, such as, say, veterans who were being mistreated in veterans hospitals and veterans homes and nursing homes and stuff like that? Or is it because Americans still believe that black people have it good enough? Black people don't get lynched anymore, thank goodness. At least not legally lynched, like public lynchings. There are no more Jim Crow laws. Dr. Martin Luther King fought against segregation. Their schools are no longer segregated legally. Now all this is legally. It's still in one shape or form. It still happens nowadays. But I challenge anyone who were to go against Colin Kaepernick and not agree with his points and not agree with what he's doing. Is it because you really just hate that form of protest? Or is it because you just think black people have it good enough? You think that the many terrible things that you've seen, such as slavery, Jim Crow, and the many terrible things that you've seen in the history book, a lot of the stuff in the history book no longer happens. You think that just because that no longer happens, that black people's lives are good enough. And in my opinion, is that the many people who oppose Colin Kaepernick and oppose his viewpoint on life and what he did and what Nike did by supporting him, and what is that it's never about the action with Kaepernick. In a roundabout way, it's a way for people who oppose him and oppose Colin Kaepernick and oppose what he does and oppose the protest. It's a roundabout way for them to oppose the purpose, who don't believe that this argument and this protest is worthy of a protest, who don't believe that this purpose is worthy of having people in the streets protesting, kneeling on the football field, doing whatever they need to do to make themselves feel heard about an issue that seriously affects many black people every single day. And my favorite quote that I've seen is, "Justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outrageous as those who are." So I challenge white people, other people of color, to look themselves in the mirror and understand why these protests are going on, but also to understand that many people still have these subtle racist thoughts, these subtle thoughts that associate certain behaviors and certain actions which are positive actions and positive behaviors with the white race. And by doing that, you're not giving black people the benefit of the doubt. You're believing the worst in black people. You're expecting them to not speak well, to not get good grades, to not live in suburban neighborhoods, to not do this, to not do that, no matter what it is, what other examples I can give you. You're expecting them to not be able to do that. And you are endorsing the fact that the positive actions that they do are white. This is an issue that is going to go on until other people of color and white people thoroughly and genuinely understand the reasons why black people are protesting, black people are upset, black people are hurting because something like this happens. And to the people who are unaffected by this, the people who don't have to deal with the racism, whether it's subtle or whether it's just out in the open, the people who don't have to deal with these many thoughts and actions and having people say certain things to them, the people who don't have to deal with all of that, we're waiting on you. The ball is in your hands. Are you going to stand with us? Are you going to continue to stand against us and continue to let this happen? Continue to let my people be killed in cold blood in the street with their only defense being this thing, this phone right here. It's the only thing we have to defend us nowadays. It's the only thing that is going to continue to fight for us. This is just something that I had to get off my chest. This is something that I felt like I needed to speak about because it really hits home. It's really something that makes you think as a black man, should I go running around my neighborhood today? Should I do this? Should I do that? Will I be looked at as a threat? So it's something that resonates within me, and I know it's something that resonates within the many black people that I know and love, and any other black people or brown people or other people of color who have dealt with racism. And I know it's something that affects everyone involved. So this is definitely something I felt like needed to be said and needed to be talked about. So I just wanted to thank you for listening today. I will be back with more sports content later on this week, next week. I am finally on Spotify. So this episode will be uploaded to Spotify as well. So check that out. Please subscribe. Please listen. Do whatever you can to, just support if you like what you hear, if you like speaking and interviewing and other things such as that. So I'll get more interviews in soon, but I just wanted to thank everyone for listening. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.